They say the worst fights in a marriage aren't the loud ones, they're the quiet ones. The ones where the air shifts, your stomach drops, and you know you've said something you can't take back. My name's Lauren. I'm 31, and 2 weeks ago, I managed to detonate my marriage over cold takeout, an exhausted husband, and one sentence I wish I could erase from the air. It was a Thursday night in late March. The sky had that dull, winter almost over kind of gray that makes you feel heavy before you even step inside your own house. I'd planned to cook chicken, vegetables, maybe even one of those. I saw this on Instagram pasta recipes I'd been saving, but my day at work unraveled before lunch. One crisis bled into another until I was clocking out an hour late, shoulders aching, head pounding. So I ordered Thai on the way home. No big deal, I told myself. Alex loves Thai. Still, I set the takeout containers on the counter and pulled a couple of pots from the cupboard, just to make it look like I'd at least started dinner. The lie was stupid, but I was tired, and I didn't want that look, the one that says I notice when you stop trying. Alex came through the door just before 8. No kiss, no hey babe. Just that familiar sound of his keys hitting the dish by the door and the soft thud of his work bag on the floor. His tie was loosened, shirt untucked, the kind of unraveled neatness that meant he'd pushed himself too far again. He glanced at the counter. His eyes lingered on the takeout bags, then slid to the unused pots on the stove. The muscle in his jaw moved once, just enough for me to notice. "You didn't cook?" he asked. Not angry, just flat. I could have explained. Could have said the day got away from me, that I was exhausted, that I thought he'd enjoy a change. But instead, I felt my chest tighten. That prickly, defensive feeling I get when I think I'm being judged. "I worked a 14-hour day," he said slowly. "And you couldn't just make something?" That was it. The sentence that cracked something in me. Because here's the thing. I'd heard that tone before. Not from him. From Ethan. Ethan, my ex-boyfriend. The one man Alex has never been able to stand. The man whose shadow has hovered over certain corners of our relationship no matter how much I swore he didn't matter anymore. So I did the one thing I should never have done. I took the bait my own temper dangled. "Maybe if you worked the kind of hours Ethan did," I said, my voice sharper than I meant, "I wouldn't have to worry about making dinner every night." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded. The kind of silence that makes you realize your marriage is standing on the edge of something dangerous. Alex didn't yell, didn't slam anything. He just looked at me for a long moment, and in that look, I could see every unspoken thing between us stacking up like bricks in a wall. And then, without a word, he walked upstairs. I stayed in the kitchen for a few seconds after he left, still holding the paper bag from the restaurant like it was some kind of shield. My pulse was pounding in my ears, but I told myself he'd cool off. He always did. Except this time, I didn't hear him in the bathroom or in the bedroom. No drawers opening, no hanger clinking against the closet rod while he changed out of his work clothes. Instead, there was this slow, deliberate sound, the zip of a suitcase being opened. It's funny how certain sounds can rearrange your insides in an instant. I walked upstairs and found him in our bedroom, crouched by the closet, pulling folded shirts from the shelf. He wasn't throwing things in a rage. He was packing, methodically. "Alex? What are you doing?" He didn't look up. "Exactly what it looks like." I forced a laugh, hoping to make it smaller than it felt. "You're not seriously packing over that, are you? Over one stupid comment?" That made him pause. He straightened slowly, holding a stack of shirts in his hands, and finally met my eyes. "It's not just this, Lauren," he said, his voice low but steady. "It's everything. The way you talk to me. The way you make me feel like nothing I do is enough. And now—" He swallowed hard. "Now you bring him into it?" I opened my mouth to defend myself, but the words tangled. "It wasn't like that. I was just frustrated. You know I don't care about Ethan. You know I'd never—" He shook his head, cutting me off. "You don't say something like that by accident. You've been thinking it. Maybe not every day, but it's been there, waiting for the moment you'd let it out." My throat tightened. "That's not fair." He set the shirts in the suitcase and began folding jeans with the same maddening calm. "What's not fair is giving everything I have to this marriage and still feeling like I'm competing with a ghost." The word ghost hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to tell him Ethan was nothing but a bad chapter in my past, that he couldn't possibly measure up to Alex in any real way. But I knew Alex wasn't talking about Ethan as a person. He was talking about the idea of him, the version of me that still measured Alex against someone else, someone he'd never be. I tried to reach for him, but he stepped back. "Please don't," he said quietly. "Not unless you actually mean it." And then he went back to packing, methodical, unhurried, like a man who'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. By the time I heard the suitcase wheels rolling down the hallway, I was still frozen in the doorway of our bedroom. I wanted to stop him, to stand in front of the door and demand we talk it out, but my pride pinned me to the floor. He didn't slam the door when he left, didn't even close it hard. The soft click felt worse than any loud exit could have. I stayed in the quiet for a long time, listening for the sound of his car starting, but all I caught was the echo of my own breathing. That first night, I waited for him to call. I told myself he just needed a few hours to cool off. Maybe he'd drive around, maybe go to his brother's place, and by morning, we'd both feel stupid and apologize. But the phone stayed dark. By noon the next day, I cracked and sent him a message. "Can we talk?" No reply. That night, I sent another. "I'm sorry if I hurt you, but you're taking this way too far." I hated myself as soon as I hit send. It sounded defensive, like I was putting his pain on trial. Hours later, his response came through. Short, surgical. "Thanks for confirming what I already suspected. You only see people for what they can give you." I stared at it until the screen went black. The part that stung wasn't the accusation itself. It was the possibility that he was right, that somewhere deep down, I had been tallying up his worth in ways I didn't want to admit. That night, I tried to sleep in our bed. Alone, it felt bigger, colder. I reached for his side out of habit and found only the cool, untouched sheet. It wasn't just his body I missed. It was the weight of being seen, even in the smallest ways, by someone who knew every version of me. And now, for the first time since we met, I had no idea if he'd ever want to see me again. The weekend passed in fragments, long stretches of silence broken only by the hum of the fridge or the creak of the floor when I paced the hallway. I kept picking up my phone, scrolling to his name, and then setting it down again. I wanted to say come home, but the truth was, I didn't know what he'd be coming home to. Because the more I replayed that fight, the more I realized Ethan's name hadn't slipped out by accident. It wasn't about money. It wasn't even about dinners or long hours. It was about the part of me that had been quietly comparing Alex to some impossible version of what I thought I deserved since the day we met. The ugly truth, Ethan wasn't even a good partner. He was selfish, erratic, and half the time I didn't know where he was. But he had ambition. He had that restless, hungry energy that made me feel like I was living life at full speed, even when it was reckless. Alex was steady, reliable, solid. And somewhere along the way, I started mistaking that steadiness for complacency. That's what I couldn't admit to him, that my frustration wasn't because he wasn't enough. It was because I didn't know how to appreciate the kind of man who is. And maybe he'd felt that all along. Maybe that's why one comment could undo years of us. By Sunday night, I stood in our kitchen staring at the leftover Thai containers still sitting in the fridge. I should have thrown them out days ago, but I left them there, as if keeping them would somehow freeze the moment before everything cracked. But the food was cold and congealed now. Just like the conversation I hadn't had the courage to start. That's when it hit me. Alex wasn't taking space to think. He was taking space to leave. On Tuesday morning, I opened our shared email account to check a shipping confirmation, and there it was. An unread message with the subject line, "Follow up on your apartment viewing." My stomach clenched before I even clicked. The email was short, polite, and painfully clear. "Looking forward to showing you the unit on Thursday. Please confirm your availability." It wasn't we. It wasn't a place for us to move into together. It was for him, alone. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen until the words blurred. So that was it. He wasn't cooling off somewhere, waiting for me to come to my senses. He was setting up a life that didn't have my name on the lease. For a second, I imagined driving to wherever he was staying, pounding on the door, demanding to know how he could just give up like this. But even in my anger, I knew that wasn't the question I really wanted answered. What I wanted to ask was much uglier. When did you decide I wasn't worth fixing this for? I grabbed my phone and typed, "So you're apartment hunting now? That's your solution? Running instead of talking?" I hovered over send for a full minute before pressing it. No reply. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and scrolled through photos of us, vacations, birthdays, random Sunday mornings. And in every single one, I saw it now. He was leaning toward me, smiling at me, holding me like I was his center of gravity. And I realized something that made me set the glass down and close my eyes. I'd spent years making him feel like he wasn't enough, and now he was finally starting to believe it. Thursday came, and I spent the entire day imagining him walking through some bright, empty apartment, nodding politely as a realtor pointed out closet space and natural light. Imagining him standing in a kitchen that wasn't ours, picturing a life without me in it. I didn't text, didn't call. Partly because I didn't want to hand him the satisfaction of seeing me desperate, but mostly because I didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound hollow. What could possibly undo that sentence? That night, around 9, my phone buzzed. His name lit up the screen. My chest tightened so hard I had to remind myself to breathe before answering. He didn't waste time on small talk. "I signed the lease," he said. There was no anger in his voice, just finality. "Alex, please," I started, but he cut me off. "I'm not doing this anymore, Lauren. Not with someone who keeps a measuring stick hidden in their back pocket, ready to pull it out every time they're unhappy. I've been trying for years, but I can't compete with the version of me you keep in your head." I closed my eyes, tears pressing behind them. It was one comment. "It was the truth," he said quietly. "And I think we both know it wasn't the first time you thought it. Just the first time you said it out loud." Silence. Heavy and unmovable. Finally, he added, "You crossed a line, Lauren, and some lines you just can't uncross." I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but deep down, I knew he wasn't. When the call ended, I stayed on the couch, staring at the wall, listening to the faint buzz of the refrigerator. And for the first time since he'd left, I let myself feel it. The emptiness. Not the empty bed, not the empty kitchen, the empty space where my marriage used to live. And the knowledge that one careless moment had been all it took to burn it down. In the end, I learned that respect isn't just about loyalty or honesty. It's about protecting your partner's dignity, even in moments of frustration. I didn't protect his, and that single failure cost me more than love. It cost me the right to be part of his future, and now I have to live knowing I handed that future to someone else.